Hello, I'm David Mathews with Marriage Helper. We've been working with Marriage Helper for about 15 years with just hundreds and hundreds of couples. And often the question is asked, what do I do if my wife wants a divorce, but I want to save the marriage? What can you do? And I want to share 3 points with you today that really might help you. And then, of course, you can get more details on this on marriagehelper.com and the Save My Marriage course. But there's 3 points I want to share this morning. One is work on your pies, not your spouses. The other is work on smart contact as opposed to not so smart contact. And the last one is try to create a safe environment where your spouse can share anything with you. And of course, all of this takes some time and a great deal of patience. But the first thing is to work on your pies. If you're unfamiliar with that acronym, most of you are familiar with it, but in case you're not, PIE stands for physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And when we face any kind of marriage problem, it's often our temptation is to fix my spouse. If only they would do 1, 2, 3, 4 and change, maybe our marriage could work. And we have found that that approach just rarely, if ever, works because I can't change my spouse. I can only do what I can do. My wife and I also work with Spark of Life. It's a grief recovery organization that we founded about 15 years ago as well. And there's so many parallels between the two organizations. But one thing is we have an expression in our grief work, all I can do is all I can do, and all I can do is enough. In other words, I can't do what I can't do. It sounds so simplistic. It's so simple, and yet it's so difficult to do. I cannot do what I cannot do. And you can write that down and kind of book it and put it in a picture frame and hang it on your office wall. I can't do what I can't do. And frustration occurs when I try to fix somebody else and I fail to work on me. And even if I'm working on me and I'm trying to fix my spouse, it's not going to work. So physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually, work on yourself. I cannot work on my spouse's pies. I can only work on my pies. And that makes sense, doesn't it? And so physically, be all I can do physically to try to get some help. And intellectually, you're doing that right now by going on marriagehelper.com and trying to challenge your brain and get some ideas and from people who have experienced this, and it basically works. It's the best thing you can do, and really it's the only thing you can do. I am powerless to fix anybody else. And believe me, I've spent a lot of my life trying to fix people. Anybody on board with that? And how has that worked? Well, it usually works with frustration. So work on your pies. And here's something about working on your pies. Most of us begin to work on our pies. If we have a reluctant spouse and they want a divorce and I want to save the marriage, and if you're a guy and your wife doesn't want to work on the marriage, what can you do? You can work on your pies, but here's a real key to that. Work on your pies for the right motive. Almost everybody begins working on their pies in order to get their spouse back. That makes sense, and it's the logical process, right? I want my marriage to work. It's pure motives. But I've got to transition into working on my pies because it's the right thing to do and not to get my spouse back. And that sounds contradictory. We're not playing a game here, but we have found that if I work on my pies in order to get my wife back, it often results in 2 negative things. The first thing it could result in is my spouse responds in an angry way when I start changing if my motive is to get her to change, to come back to me. And here's why. Because for one thing, we've heard this often, and I've talked to spouses who are reluctant, and their husband is trying to do the right thing by working on their pies, and here's what they say to me. Well, it makes me angry that he's doing that. For all these years, I've waited and wanted him to change, and now it's too late, and now he's trying to manipulate me back. And so here's this guy, this husband, he's trying to do everything to get his wife back, and she responds in an angry way because she perceives it as manipulation. Often the people I work with, one spouse feels manipulated or controlled by the other, and there's other problems as well. And they start falling away emotionally from the relationship. And let's suppose it's the wife and she's left and she wants a divorce, but you want to make the marriage work. Well, if you do it for the motivation of getting her back, she will probably sense it and probably perceive it as another manipulation, and also she won't trust it. Because you see, it takes longer than just a few weeks of change for the other person to trust it enough to try to even work on the marriage. So what's the solution to that? Well, one of the solutions is I've got to work on my framing of working on my pies from I'm doing it to get my marriage to work to I'm doing it because it's the right thing. And here's another reason. If I do it to get my spouse back, and that's my primary and only motivation, what's going to happen is that she is going to perceive it as a control thing, not trust it, and probably respond in a negative way. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to get discouraged. I might even get angry because my motives appear to be true, and they really are. I'm working on me, but she is perceiving it as you trying to lure her back. And so she'll respond perhaps in a negative way, and then you'll get discouraged and quit. And then it'll validate to her that you're only doing this for a short term to try to manipulate her back. And so the first thing I want to share with you is do it because it's the right thing to do. Look, working on my pies, my physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual part of me, which is really the whole part of me, is what I need to do whether I'm married, not married, good marriage, bad marriage, right? It's what I need to do to be a better employee or employer. It's what I need to do to be a better person. If you're a God-fearing person, it's what I need to do to be more pleasing to my God, right? I need to continually, no matter how old you are, you need to work on yourself. And many times I have wasted so much time trying to change other people. And it's futile, right? I can't do it. I'm powerless to change anybody. But you know what? I'm not powerless. I'm not powerless to change this guy. I can change. I can start focusing on the pies in order for me to be a better person because it's the right thing to do. And then if my spouse responds negatively or not at all, right? I might be discouraged, but I'm going to continue working on my pies. And so the first point is working on your pies because it's the right thing to do and not in any way trying to manipulate anybody. And then I'll be more consistent. And gradually my wife will see that. Now, whether she comes back or not, or your marriage works or not, we're not prophets. We don't know. But we know if anything works, this works when I focus on working on me and my pies. All I can do is all I can do, and all I can do is enough. And you know what happens when I have that attitude? I'm really working on my emotional side. And my emotional side of the pies is the most important. All four are important, the P, I, E, and S. But the emotional side, I need to be healthy emotionally. I don't need to appear to be desperate and trying to get my wife back all the time because that's really not very attractive. Plus, she might think of it as manipulative. And so emotionally, as I graduate into this thinking, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Emotionally, I'm more at peace with myself. I hope that makes sense to you. And that leads us to the second point of smart contact. What in the world is smart contact? Well, smart contact is contact that's smart. You can write that down too. You can say, "Oh, that's brilliant, David. Smart contact is contact that's smart." But think about it. I want my marriage to work. That's a noble desire, right? And so how do I do that? I work on myself, number one. Number two, I try to engage in smart contact. Oh, by the way, smart contact means any contact that evokes positive emotion in my spouse. If it evokes negative emotion, it's not smart contact. We call those pushes or pulls. Bad contact, when I violate my wife's desires. For example, she doesn't want me to text her every morning, "I love you, I want our marriage to work." We would call that a push because it's pushing her away even further emotionally. So smart contact is what evokes positive emotion in my spouse. It's totally dependent on their perception. So for example, if my spouse does not want me to continually say, "I'm working on my marriage, I'm standing for my marriage, I want our marriage to work, I will never not love you, I will never quit making this marriage work," and trying to get you back, that could very easily be a push because it's pushing her away emotionally. Hope that makes sense, right? A lot of the guys that I coach are in this position, and they'll say, but my motives are pure. I'm trying to be the best I can be. But you know what? If I keep telling my spouse I'm standing for the marriage, that could be a push. So I need to quit telling her that if it's a negative thing, and I need to just work on my pies. That's smart contact. If she doesn't want me to contact her, if she doesn't want me to send emails every day or text every day, if she doesn't want me to buy her a Valentine's gift, if she doesn't want flowers on our anniversary, I want to do all that to impress upon her that I'm standing for my marriage. But in so doing, that can be not so smart contact, and I'm actually pushing her away, and the pushes become real big. Now, sometimes we have essential pushes, right? I can't help it. So if me standing for my marriage is a push, I can't help that. I am going to stand for my marriage. But if me talking about it all the time is a push, that's not a necessary push. That's not an essential push. I can stop talking about it with her. I can focus on my pies and try to respect her wishes of not contacting her or of not keeping on talking about the marriage and not even texting, I love you every morning, right? It depends on her response to that. Let me give you an illustration of a real person I worked with for quite a long time. He was in this position. His wife wanted a divorce. They were separated. She had filed the papers and he hadn't signed them yet and all that. And so he's working with me. And so one day he decides, and we had an appointment, and he said, man, I don't know what to do, David. I thought I was doing everything right, and she is so angry at me. I said, so what happened? He said, I took the kids back on a Sunday night. We had visitation, and I took them back, and I noticed the yard was just terrible. It had not been cut in about 3 or 4 weeks. It was terrible. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to surprise my spouse. Now, she had told him she did not want him coming into the house without her knowing about it. Every now and then he needed to go to the house to get some things that he had left there. And she wanted him to just simply text her, is it all right if I go to the house for about 15 minutes? I need to pick up something. And she would text him back, said, yes, it's okay, because she was at work, the kids were at school. She felt safe about that. So that was their agreement. So one day, he's telling me this, on that Sunday, I noticed the yard needed fixing. And so on Monday, when she was at work, I went over the house. I had to go through the house to get to the garage. And I got all the tools out, the lawnmower and the weed eater and all that stuff. And I worked 4 hours and got the yard looking great. At 5:30, she texts me, and this is the text, how dare you? I am so angry I don't ever want to see you again type of message. And he was confused about it. Do you know why she was so angry? Because he had violated her space. He had broken their agreement that he was going to text her if he needed to go to the house for anything, and she felt disrespected and controlled by him, even though he did a noble thing. He was very confused about that. So I said, so that obviously evoked a negative emotion in your wife, and she feels disrespected. That's what I told him. And we worked for about an hour trying to get him to see that this was a push because it was not smart contact, even though what he was doing was a noble thing. He wanted to help. And so he said, well, David, what should I have done? I said, well, what do you think? What do you think you could have done? He said, maybe I could have texted her and said, hey, would you mind if I come over Monday when you're at work and the kids are at school and do the yard? I'd have to go through the house and open the garage door because that's the way they did it in their house. And he said, if you don't want me to do it, I won't do it. And I understand. I get it. But how do you feel about that? And so he told me that's probably what he should have done. What do you think of that approach? Well, I've tried this approach and shared it with a lot of groups at Marriage Helper Workshops. And I've asked the group, what do you think she would have responded? How would she have responded if he had have texted her and asked permission and said, I understand it if you don't want me to do this? Without doubt, all the women that spoke up in all these workshops said, I would have felt respected. I probably would have said, sure. because, see, he was honoring her. He was respecting her. That is smart contact. So in doubt, don't do it, right? And that leads us to the third point. And the third point is create a safe environment. Well, without him even realizing it, if he had have texted her and said, do you mind if I come over and cut the grass while you're at work and the kids are at school, he would be actually creating a safe environment for her to start feeling safe that he really is listening and respecting her. And he's listening to her wishes and he's honoring that. And so if you do that month after month after month, not being perfect, you're going to make mistakes, but genuinely trying to listen and be respectful, then safety starts to come into play in your relationship, and it takes time. So I'm working with a guy. His wife wanted a divorce. She moved out of town to a city where her daughters lived, and he was about 5 hours away, and I was meeting with him once a week. And so every week was the same thing. Well, I texted my wife. I text her every day, and I said, I love you. I want our marriage to work. And she responds in an angry way, David, what's wrong with her? Well, what was wrong was he was disrespecting her. She didn't want him to do that. She knew he was standing for the marriage. She knew that he said he loved her, but his actions over years had proved to her that he didn't respect her. He was a controller. He admitted he was controlling. And I gently said to him, you're still controlling her. She's reading it as control. Well, my motives are pure. And I said, I know, and I appreciate that. Well, what should I do? I said, stop texting her. But I want her to know I love her. I said, if she called me and I talked to her and I said, do you think your husband is standing for the marriage and loves you, or he thinks he loves you? She would say, yes, I know he's standing for the marriage. He's driving me crazy. So I said, don't text her. Smart contact would mean if she contacts you, fine. If she wants to talk about the marriage, fine. If she doesn't want to talk about the marriage, don't ever bring up the marriage. But we need to talk about the marriage. I said, I get it, and I understand, and I feel for you and where you are, but smart contact means I respect her and I honor her. So here's what happened. For 3 months, finally, he stopped texting her. He stopped calling her. He stopped emailing her because that was her wish. Well, the situations came up when some problem with the kids came. They're all grown, and they needed to talk. Well, she initiated that, and he responded. He was creating a safe environment. And then one Thanksgiving, his daughter that lived close to his wife, who was filing for divorce, his daughter texted and said, Dad, would you like to come for Thanksgiving? We're having all the family here. Mom's going to be there. Would you like to come? He responded back, and he said, let me make sure it's all right with my wife. And so he texted his wife and said, our daughter asked me for Thanksgiving. I know you're going to be there. I understand if you don't want me there. I won't take offense to it. How do you feel about this? How do you think she responded? She responded, well, thank you so much for considering my feelings. See, she felt respected. Now, for 3 months, he hadn't violated the dumb contact rule, right? He hadn't violated it. He wasn't having dumb contact. And so she said, I think it would be fine. So he went. They had a lovely day. He stayed at a hotel because his wife lived next door to their daughter, and he didn't bring up the marriage. He didn't try to force anything. And then about 2 weeks later, another daughter that lived close by to the wife he texted him and said, hey, Dad, would you like to come for Christmas? Everybody's going to be here. He said, let me check with your mom. So he texted his wife, same thing. She said, that would be lovely. So he's all excited. I said, whatever you do, don't bring up the marriage. Whatever you do, don't try to get her to come back. Whatever you do, just keep working on you. You can't change her. Smart contact. Create a safe environment. So he went. Here's what happened. About 2 days before Christmas, he went about 3 days before Christmas, stayed at a hotel. They had dinners, 2 or 3 days before Christmas, and all the family was there. And about 2 days before Christmas, his wife and him are sitting in the den. They're just talking about, with the grandkids, all that stuff. And he goes, hey, if you don't want to do this, I get it, but I haven't gotten so-and-so, one of our daughters, a Christmas present. I just don't know how to shop for her. Would you mind telling me, giving me some ideas about what I can get her? And she said, well, I've got to go shopping this afternoon. You want to just go together and I'll help you pick out something. Wow. So he said, well, if you don't mind. And she said, no, I'd be fine. Why did she all of a sudden, was it all of a sudden that she felt safe? No, he had built that safety over time by respecting her. They went shopping. They had a great time. They ate lunch together. He paid for it. Good move, right? Good move. He paid for it, didn't bring up the marriage, didn't bring up her coming back to him, didn't bring up coming to the workshop, didn't do anything like that. Now safety comes, and he meets with me after Christmas. Should I ask her to come to the workshop? I said, if you think that she might respond in a positive way, yes, that would be okay. Or we had a good relationship, her and I had a good relationship. You say, just tell her if she wants to find out about the workshop, she can call me, but there'll be no pressure on her to come. Anyway, long story, they ended up coming to the Marriage Helper Workshop. Longer story, about 6 months after the workshop, they were remarried and renewed their vows with each other. True story. He created a safe place by using smart contact, by honoring her and respecting her, by working on himself and his pies, and he stopped trying to work on her pies. Do you get it? 3 points today. If you want to get a wife back, it's not guaranteed to work, but if anything works, that will work, and you'll be a better person for it.